Well, hey, everybody, welcome. Welcome to our program tonight. Glad you could all make it. We're really excited about this one. I just wanted to announce a couple upcoming things for next month. We're going to have another program, a Friday night program on May 2nd. Shane Halter, who's a PhD student from UNM, he's going to be presenting his research on energy management and migrating hummingbirds. So that'll be a really fun one. And then the next morning, Saturday morning, May 3rd, there's going to be a field outing, not exactly related to hummingbirds, but we're going to go to the Members River Ranch, and that's led by Susan Middlestat. And we're going to be keeping this a small group of like 12 to 15, just because it's easier in that area. So for those of you that are members, keep an eye on the emails that come out, and we'll have an RSVP process on that, and it'll sort of be a first come, first serve. So this is where being a member is advantageous. So be looking for an email, and also our website and Facebook will have that.
How do I become a member if I'm not already?
Good question. I think you can visit our website at Bird Alliance of Southwestern New Mexico.
Bird Alliance
SWNM.org. And it has the info there. And also, is there any information here?
I don't think so.
Okay, not tonight. But website, Facebook, you can message us any way like that. Good question. So there's more things coming up. We're always announcing Facebook, website, and emails. So keep an eye on there, on those avenues, and you'll see more events coming up. But tonight we have Madi, Vasquez, Devyn, Scott, who are students here at Western. We're really pleased to have student representation here. And Professor Bill Norris is gonna, what? It's not.
He calls me professor.
Oh.
I got called a lot of things. I won't share here, but that's not one.
Because
Yeah.
which you are both in, or were in his ornithology class, right? You
Are
currently.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a cool, kind of full circle moment.
Currently bugging him 4 times a week.
So I'll leave it.
We'll tell a little story how this presentation came about.
Can I just want to real quick for Zoom, our mic is on this laptop, so the closer you can be to the laptop to talk, then the
I know, even though I have a big mouth, I need to be up here.
Yeah.
So last fall, Madi and Devyn both came up to me independently and started talking about some wood projects that they were thinking about involving woodpeckers. And I could just see all the enthusiasm. Devyn was thinking about studying dialects of northern flickers. And yeah, that's not a northern flicker, Devyn.
Nope, it's an acorn woodpecker.
Yeah, and Madi she was in the course I taught last fall, into a senior project. She brought a paper for us to read. It just really caught my attention. It was about foraging behavior in ladderback woodpeckers. It was a dimension of bird biology I hadn't thought a whole lot about. So, and I've been involved with some really great folks. You mentioned Susan and Karen Beckenbach giving some presentation. I like being involved and giving presentations with other folks, but I know these two pretty well. They're very enthusiastic. I didn't have any hesitation to ask them to. They're going to be doing most of the talking here, because Isaiah and Jude and Mary Gold, they listen to me talk all the time. I don't want to put them to sleep. And maybe a few other students in here. So I'm going to tell you a little, so this presentation is not just going to be, here's how you tell a gilded flicker from a northern flicker. There's a little bit of that, and I've learned a lot from them. They did a lot of the background research. There's going to be some, how do you distinguish among these various 17, 18 woodpeckers that occur around here? But we're diving a little more deeply. We're going to be talking about the what makes a woodpecker a woodpecker? What are the special adaptations that they have to live in their unique going up and down tree trunks, and how is it that they can use their heads like battering rams and not injuring their head? We're going to hear about that, okay? And I want to share with you a little story. This is going to, I'm so pleased this organization I've been involved, used to be called Audubon Southwest, our Bird Alliance. I'm pleased to see all the youth in here. I'm not young, as you can see. And so one of these fine folks came up in my office about a half hour ago. Bill, you ever get nervous before you get ready to give a presentation? And so I threw it right back. And so this is, how many of you in here know who Bob Hope is? Maybe the better question is, how many of you here do not know who Bob Hope is? Okay, that not surprising. So I told a little story. Bob Hope was the entertainer of the latter half of the 20th century. He was entertaining the troops in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, all the way up to the Gulf War when he was in his early. You'll see where I'm going with this. Bob Hope. Somebody asked him. He was 100 years old. Somebody asked Bob Hope, Bob, do you ever, Mr. Entertainer, do you ever get nervous before? I think he was in his 90s when he was asked this question. Do you ever get nervous before getting up in front of a group of people? And he said, well, if I always get a few butterflies, and the very few instances when I don't get the butterflies, that's when it goes flat. And so that's a good rule of thumb here. So that's a little story about Bob Hope, and which I shared with one of these two fine folks. And so I don't have anything else to say, except I know you two want to introduce. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourselves. Your folks are here. I thought that was your sister and your brother up there. I'm getting old here. And your dad is zooming in from Japan.
And my mom from Animus.
Yeah. Talk about, we got some world representatives. Tell us about yourselves.
I have been attending Western for about 4 years, making it my senior year. I recently just started getting into birds, and my first bird I really was interested in was woodpeckers. And so this is very exciting for me, and it's new, but I'm excited to share this with you guys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Yep.
I'm Devyn. Some of you guys probably recognize me from the Lake Roberts trip that I led last fall. I am also a zoology student here. It is about my second year here. And I've been haunting the Bird Alliance for a better part of a year now. They cannot get rid of me. So I am incredibly passionate about birds and really excited to be here tonight. So thank you guys.
So you have the clicker, right, Devyn? So let's go to the next slide, and I'll maybe a few comments on the first slide. You guys just jump right in there. We do a pretty good job doing tag team here. These are the majority of the woodpeckers. Yeah.
Didn't kill the front lights.
Oh.
They really
Yeah.
made the projection.
There you go.
Great.
Yeah, so here are the majority of the woodpeckers, probably all of them, which occur in North America. And it's amazing. Most of these occur in the Southwest. And I'm going to ask you at the end of this presentation, can you name half a dozen species of woodpeckers? This don't occur down here in Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas, but you could file that away. There's a lot of woodpeckers. The next slide there, Devyn. And so we will talk a little bit about bird identification. We all have our favorite bird ID books. I don't see this one on the bookshelves a whole lot in the bookstores here. This was on my nightstand when I was a young man. This Golden Guide to Birds. This is where I really cut my teeth. Various versions of Roger Tory Peterson's book, the latest version of National Geographic. Of course, this is what I use. These folks who are taking ornithology, we're learning birds together. All these books have various point out features of birds that maybe some of the others don't. But this is where I think most of us start out. You need to know, what is it? Well, we're going to go a little bit beyond. And we have discovered, next slide, that there is a great book as part of this Peterson Reference Guide series here. This book here by Stephen Shunk on woodpeckers came out about 8-9 years ago. If you want to really learn about the biology of woodpeckers, this is the book. As is this book right here. A lot of you may be familiar with about that series of books by Arthur C. Bent about 120 so years ago. A press in Indiana came up with an updated version of this. There's a lot of natural history information from the late 19th century, early 20th century. These two books, and Sibley's book right here is also very good. These books go beyond. This is how you tell a red-naped sapsucker from a yellow-bellied sapsucker, which, by the way, showed up about 3 blocks from my house last weekend. More on that later. These books go beyond. If you want to get into the biology of birds, particularly woodpeckers, these two books right here, and they're not that expensive. So the three of us have been going through the pages of these books for the last 3 months, trying to mine information to go beyond just how do you identify it. So I reckon this book right here is just, both of these books are just outstanding.
Oh yeah, I'll say Stephen Shunk also has a great writing voice for a field guide. I felt myself laughing quite a few times just because he finds some really interesting tidbits to put in there.
He makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna go to the next slide here, and we're gonna tag team this. And since Aaron said that even though I recommended we come up with, there should be a bullhorn on here somewhere that we can click on. Where we can hear the sound of a woodpecker. I don't see it. A lot of you knew Dr. Roland Shook, a good friend of many of us, when he handed the baton for this course to me. Maybe I didn't put it in here. One of the MP3 files was of a woodpecker drumming. So I wanted to click on this, and this, I think, this, Devyn, this is where we're going tomorrow, or near to it.
Near to it, we're going to Little Cherry Creek.
Close to it.
Yep.
So if I could play this MP3 file, we were going to ask you, what are woodpeckers saying? Or what's the point of them drumming? What are they doing? And let's,
Is it right here, Bill?
yeah, there you go. I thought that was a smudge here, where maybe I'd use a dry erase marker. Yeah, let's click on it. Can you access that? I'm afraid to touch this.
Let's see.
Okay, listen to
Oh,
this.
there.
Well, thank Dr. Roland Shook, who handed me, I don't know where he got these MP3 files back in 2008 when he handed me the baton. What's the point of woodpeckers drumming, making that? What's the point of that?
Red named sapsucker. We're digging for bugs.
Digging for gold, digging for bugs?
Yeah.
Any other ideas? Identification? Territory? Identifying, and I am not good enough. Some of you in here, I'm sure, are to tell, I think that, I can't remember what woodpecker that is. Folks who really spend a lot of time can tell from the cadence which woodpecker it is. Tracking a lady. All right. Yeah. So those are the sounds that they make. And so we're going to be thinking about that stuff. Next slide. And so sounds like I'm taking off the title of a song of the Beatles in the 1960s, A Day in the Life of a Woodpecker. Before we dive into here are the woodpeckers which occur down here, think about the challenges of life going up and down a tree trunk here, all these wood chips flying off, some of the potential stresses that you might have. And in terms of damaging your bill, your eyes, your nose, how is it that you're able to be stable going up and down this tree? Why is it you don't get your bill stuck in this tree? I never thought about that. So the three of us were reading that book by Stephen Shunk. Take it. I don't want to say another one.
So a lot of the acorns adaptations make it also pretty good for construction sites and heavy metal concerts. You really want to make sure you don't get concussions. So there's a lot of shock absorbency. There's and a lot of adaptations to make sure you can also get bugs out of really, really tiny holes.
And I would say like they also have a lot of adaptations to be able to move around on their sites and habitats, as well as the shock absorption.
Can you folks out in cyberspace hear us?
They're not gonna be able to tell us.
Okay.
But I would suggest a mic if it's.
And so they have a lot of adaptations to be able to live in the habitat that they choose and be able to forage for as well.
There, now, we're good.
With the cranium, you can see that usually there is a lot of fusion. This helps a lot of the time have the brain to not rattle as they're hitting this wood so hard and trying to get food from it.
Yeah, that leads into the next point. So yeah, a lot of fusion. They also have really thick brain cases. You know, and they also have some pretty good exterior muscles that'll come up when we're talking about the tongue here in a minute. So it's kind of like a motorcycle helmet. You've got some good cushioning inside, and you've also got a pretty good hard shell, you know, just in case you fall off your bike, or in this case, drill into a tree with your face.
Yeah, as you can see in the diagram, you can actually see what they consider almost like a spongy bone that's located here in the eye section and then here in the lower back. Just so that with that shock, it's able to help absorb it and not so much damage to the head and brain.
I think you're turning that on and off. No, it's a directional microphone pointed at your mouth.
Okay, there you go. Oh,
No.
it's like going in and out.
No,
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try to speak louder. And then with their bill, if you see that a lot of birds of prey, how their bills are shaped a little different, just like at the curve, theirs has to be more of a shovel shape so that they're able to actually jam their beaks into the wood to be able to look for food sources or make nest cavities as well.
So what happens if the bill gets stuck? You know, you're trying to get these tasty little termite nuggets and all of a sudden your face is stuck in a tree. One of the cool things about birds actually in general is they have a hinge in between the bill and the cranium. So what they can do is actually go and just open it up a little bit, slide that sucker right out of there. So this is a wonderful picture of the craniokinesis. Some of you guys, if you've ever seen like woodcocks where they can raise the tip up a little bit, that's rhynchokinesis. This one is craniokinesis. So birds can do some really funny stuff with their bills.
Another diagram of just the craniokinesis, showing how they're able to move the upper bill and lower bill.
Lots of interesting bones in the head that work to move it forward, because we can't do that. You know, if you try to move your upper jaw forward, you're gonna look a little silly.
And then this photo is showing that there's a lot of bristle protection in front of their nares. This might help with some woodchucks like coming back at them, and so it would help them prevent it from going in.
One of the coolest things about the woodpecker is its tongue. And as you can see, it's pretty long there. It has to get way in those crevices. So you might be sitting here thinking, where are they storing all that tongue? It actually wraps around the head and it uses muscle contractions to slide it forward. So some of you guys might have seen a video online. I can't remember exactly what woodpecker it was, but it was one of those bird buddy cans of the bird feeders. And there was a woodpecker just shooting his tongue at a different bird trying to get it away. So alternate use.
Another question. On a woodpecker's beak, is the beak just like solid where it hits, or does each individual top and bottom move separately?
I don't know.
I don't know for sure either, but I suspect it's probably in concert, probably going together. Yeah, I'm thinking if I was a woodpecker and I just had my upper jaw banging into the tree and not the lower jaw, I'm thinking of having some sore jaws. Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question, which means when we say we don't know, that's a good question. Usually means we don't know the answer. All right.
So here's another good diagram of the hyoid horns, which are the bones in there. Woof, right through there. And you might not realize it wraps all the way around, almost going to the nares there.
And then they also have a unique structure in their eye, which is called a nictitating membrane. It's almost like a film or membrane that is able to cover the eye and like the eyelid so that it can help be protected as well from anything that might hit the eyes.
So another excellent adaptation, especially if, like I said, you're banging your head into a tree, is the sclerotic brain. I actually found out it is also found in different types of animals, like tuna, which are really fast moving through the ocean. So they need some support in their eyes from all the pressure. So something similar here, if you've got a lot of pressure in your head, you know, you want to make sure your eyes are well protected. Oh. And then they also have the pectin, which is this weird little lasagna looking thing in the middle of the eye.
Oh, look at pickleball paddle.
Yeah, pickleball paddle.
That'll relate to some of this here, you know.
I think I'm just hungry for dinner. And that helps also maintain pressure in the eyes. Working with this.
Don't when we go to the optometrist and they always have that little poof, that little checking for your internal eye pressure. So that's Devyn actually said it. There's really maintaining, you got to maintain high pressure inside that eye counter when you're banging your head up against that tree, and that will protect them. And the inner layer of the eye there, choroid, it's highly vascularized, so it can maintain high blood pressure to counter when it's beating its head up against the tree trunk. Yeah. Yeah, the point of this was, go ahead. Go ahead there.
It's just, so as you can see, are you guys able to locate any ear, any hole? No? That's because it's hidden under a lot of feathers and ear protection, just so that as well, it doesn't get anything up in there or it helps a lot reduce the sound, because as we can hear woodpeckers, I'm not sure if they're able to actually hear themselves since it's a lot of sound and yeah, it's just a lot of sound when they start pecking.
Much like the jackhammer outside your house at 7 in the morning on a Saturday, and you really want to sleep in. So, yeah, another good diagram of how they're muffling that noise, which I think may explain why they're so dang loud. If you've ever been out in the woods going, oh man, tone it down like just a little, man. We can hear you. They might need to be that loud. And they also have, you know, obviously you need some really strong muscles if you're gonna be going like this all day. So they've got some pretty strong neck muscles in there that help support and make sure that they can get that really driving force into some of the lovely tree varieties we have around here.
And as you notice that, as any of you have noticed a woodpecker going up and down these trees, you know that this is known as a keel, where it helps muscle attachment for flight. It is shallow in woodpeckers because if it was bigger, you would be rubbing against that tree as they're moving up and down. And then with long claws, this helps them able to grip onto the substrate that they're moving up and down on.
And one little tidbit, most birds are anisodactyly, so they have 3 toes going forward, but 1 going back. These guys, along with our wonderful state bird roadrunners, are zygodactylous, 2 going forward, 2 going back. Helps them grip it better. And so we have tailbones. You know, things like cats, dogs have these really long caudal vertebrae. But birds, because they need to lighten the load, fuse a lot of bones. So they have a pigostyle, which is just a little tailbone. And so these guys actually have really broad ones, more surface area. So you get a lot of this really excellent feather attachment on the tail, because like a paddle, it supports them when they're upright on the tree. So they need that really broad bone to make sure that they don't fall backwards. And
Well, and of course, flight, for them to be able to move to different habitats and migrate.
And you might see when you're out and about, a bird, you know, most birds do kind of like this. Woodpeckers look like they're on a straight trampoline. That is called bounding. That is one of the best ways I know that it's a woodpecker. Sometimes even sitting out here in front of Harlan Hall, I'll see woodpeckers go boink, boink, boink right down the road. So without even seeing the patterns, I usually have a pretty good feeling that it's a woodpecker. So, yep.
And then now,
Yeah, before you leave the anatomy and stuff. Birds have, I guess you call it autonomic nervous system. Or how do they go so fast? You know, how do they peck so fast? And how do the wings go so fast?
Can you repeat the question for the Zoom?
yeah. So the question was, how are woodpeckers have the ability to peck so fast, drum into the wood?
I don't have a good answer for that. Now, I'm gonna put anybody on the spot here. If somebody wanted to define autonomic nervous system, I'm a botanist masquerading as an ornithologist here. So anybody, we have some, I'm not gonna call anybody out here. And you guys, a lot of you folks in here are taking some of Dr. Howard or Dr. Still's classes. You can ring the bell, autonomic. You're getting ready to duck underneath the table.
Well, I would think they have to have an autonomic nervous system for digestion and, you know, automatic processes that are happening by their heart rate, digestion, respiration,
The
things like that.
autonomic nervous system is generally controlled by the brainstem. And it's not a conscious function. It regulates heart rate and other such things, breathing, It takes the input of the sensors from the oxygen and carbon dioxide sensors in your body. So I'm not sure how a bird system works, but I suspect that they must have something.
These big textbooks that we use, they deal with it. We don't ever get to that. Thanks, Mark, as well. So it's unconscious.
Right.
I'm wondering whether the packing is a resin process rather than each individual or notion that being a separate thing, whether it's like there's a resin structure.
That's something for me to look up tonight.
Yeah.
Any other questions so far?
I got one. Do the woodpeckers, want hardwood or softwood? Do they prefer pecking on just like juniper or oak or what? What do they want to peck?
You know, I think it depends on the woodpecker.
Definitely the species. There's a lot of different vegetation that each species chooses for homes. For food. So it could depend on which species you're looking at. But there are some that exhibit specific types that they like.
So they recently, we're not gonna talk about tonight, but a lot of you and everybody, there's the ivory-billed woodpecker, which it was the largest woodpecker in North America. It loved these big bottomland forests in Arkansas, in the southeast, big monstrous tulip trees, some really soft wood. And I was talking to an ornithologist this morning, the federally endangered red cockhead woodpecker, the hardwoods of, piney woods are for their pine trees. So Devyn's right. It depends on the species. Some woodpeckers, these northern flickers around here, or they're here, we'll listen to that here momentarily. They're in a lot of different kinds of trees. It depends.
This is probably as good a point as any at which to ask. Why in God's name would flickers up in PA choose to peck through stucco?
Because they can.
That's about it. What would draw them to that?
They do it.
And the only thing under the stucco is styrofoam. We had our slump block house insulated and stucco. And I got at least 14 to 18 holes in it that I've had to repair. It's getting old.
They probably woke up that morning, reading the paper, drinking coffee, and went, it'd be fun today.
Not just one. That would want that.
Well, do you find that restoring,
Nothing. No, they're just drilling holes. Sometimes very large ones.
Well, as we'll see here in a bit, sometimes they aren't necessarily going into wood all the time. So sometimes they're drumming on different materials.
They certainly do.
Sound of it.
and why, why they sometimes drawn white first.
I'm glad nobody mentioned this. You didn't suggest this whatsoever. In case any of you were secretly thinking, you can't go out with your shotgun. Because they're native. You gotta come up with another strategy. And I suspect when we wrap up here, some of you have probably found some strategies to keep those. We got some pictures coming. We get to the acorn woodpeckers, you're gonna see some major damage. And okay.
Sorry, I got a text from Heidi that our Zoom link went out. Sorry if you're on Zoom. Okay, looks like we're good. Okay.
All right. Ooh.
So the first species of woodpeckers we're going to talk about is actually the hairy woodpecker. Here you can actually see that they exhibit sexual dimorphism, which is just any difference in appearance or behavior between the sexes of a species. So here you can see that this is a male with that red little crown in the back. And then so this one would be the female. It's easy to identify these woodpeckers since their bill length is going to be equivalent to their head length as well. And then of course, a lot of woodpeckers have somewhat of similar characteristics. So what helped me was definitely measuring, being able to see the length of the bills and comparing it to the head. Another cool thing about hairy woodpeckers is their foraging. They do like to excavate in a lot of trees or glean, which is just the process of
Anyway, keep going.
And so bleeding is just the process of being able to go on a tree and just moving around, looking for those insects and bugs. For their vocalization, oh, here's an example. This is the pick.
Very woodpecker.
And then the rattle. The pig is similar to two other species that we'll go over. What helped me recognize them is that it kind of reminds me of a squeak toy from a dog toy. And so when I'm out in the field looking for one, that's actually kind of helps me since I'll be able to identify like the different ones, and we'll go over that as well. And then for vocalizations in woodpeckers and most birds actually, all of them, they use their syrinx instead of the larynx.
Please don't get. Birds have a larynx, but they're not using it to produce sound.
It's yelling at me. Okay, there we go.
For their breeding, it's going to be monogamous, which means that they're only with one mate at a time.
Would be.
Yes, only would it be.
We'll see.
And then for fledglings, they were actually exhibiting for the first flight, they would land vertically on a tree and stay there for hours to be able to get back that energy that they had just wasted. So they need that little break, but it lasts 3 hours. So it seems like that for fledglings is really difficult and it consumes a lot of energy.
Can I say something? I'd like to interject here. We're not gonna say, there are more downy woodpeckers around here than you might think. They're not as common as hairy woodpeckers. These folks back in ornithology always hear me talk a whole lot about, Madi was talking about that long bill and a hairy woodpecker. Here, downy woodpeckers have a really short bill, and I always point out that downy woodpeckers have these black spots on the outer tail feathers. And who can see that through a pair of binoculars? Without getting any details, an elderly member of my family passed away in the last couple of months, and I have very fond memories sitting, and this person was not very mobile, sitting on the couch, looking out the dining room window at bird feeders, watching this. So every time I see pictures like this, I think of this elderly person in my family who passed, who loved. The point is, lots of people enjoy birds, even if they're not able to get out as actively as they would like. And this person just really enjoyed watching birds through their dining room, as I did with her. So anyway, it's the only time I've ever seen those spots. So anyway, those are around. That's all I have to say. That's the only slide with the up and down.
Next is the ladderback woodpecker. It also exhibits that sexual dimorphism, which is they just show a different appearance or behavior in sexes of a species. And here you can see the male also has that crown. And for both, it's very easy to identify them with this ladderback like appearance on the back of her. And this is the female. As you can see, she's missing that red as well. And then it was studied recently about their foraging habits during the breeding season, after breeding, and before breeding. They exhibit different breedings between the sexes. So females will tend to do different vegetation types than the males, or be in a higher position than a male, as well as choosing different ways on how to forage, such as gleaning, which of course is that process where they're going around silently looking for that food, and then probing. And then post breeding, of course, it still shows they go back to their original habits of just either pecking for gleaning, and yeah.
They're all back in the mesquite.
Yes.
Whereas those previous slides, the female, I think, was in the cholla cactus and the male was in the mesquite, or the other way around.
Yeah, it's
they're foraging in different places.
Yeah, the female is going to be found more often in the mesquite, and then the male is more often in the other cholla.
Yeah, Patricia was wonderful enough to bring us in the
Yeah.
ladderback. nest site here from, is it an agave?
I got it.
Agave.
Okay. This is a bird. Anybody see what it is in New Mexico? It's called the American three-toed woodpecker. It only has 3 toes. Okay. Upper montane coniferous forest, recently burned forests, get up in the heart of the Gila of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, Montana. I think they're more common. They're around. We wanted to have every woodpecker represented that occurs in New Mexico. That's the slide. Those are males right there. And you see a male American three-toed woodpecker with his 3 toes. It's got a yellow crown. It's in that same major group, the Harrys and the Downies and the ladderbacks, but it's bigger. And some of them on the right have a white back, some of them have a ladderback. You see that yellow crown, it's an American three-toed woodpecker. I know some of you are thinking, but what about the blackback woodpecker? I don't know if there's, some of you may know. I don't think that it has ever been documented in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, I did not include a slide of that. There's another woodpecker which has yellow on the crown that has a black back, but save that for the next time we get this presentation. Anyway, keep your eyes open for that. Okay. Go ahead. You've ever seen one of these?
Yeah.
Take it.
Okay. So Arizona woodpeckers, if any of you guys have ever been on a portal, Cape Creek Canyon, they're out the wazoo down there. I think last time I was down there, I saw one within 5 minutes. It's going to be the only brown woodpecker in the area. So if you see a woodpecker and it's brown, it's in Arizona.
And I'm primarily a botanist, and I get a lot of abuse about all the plant name changes that take place in plants. This thing used to be Strickland's woodpecker, it used to be the brownback woodpecker, now it's the Arizona woodpecker. What's next? That's, I think, what appears in sibling.
Bill Norris woodpecker.
No. It happens occasionally in birds, and this is the prime example here. And I think you put it real well. Because you see the CDs really, really common. The what? Yeah, it's a Mexican species. Look at this barely. Yeah, that one does occur. You get down there, I think Plantain Canyon, the very southwestern tip of New Mexico. That's where I saw my first one. Anyway, so there's that.
So there are 4 species of sapsuckers in the areas, and one of the coolest things I think about them is instead of the usual circular holes that you might see with like acorn woodpeckers,
Or even the ladderback.
they make this really cool cribbage board pattern. And so if anyone's going on a field trip tomorrow, there are some really good examples of that. And I've even seen a ruby crowned kinglet drinking the sap out of it.
You can see it, they provide a lot of resources such as food for other animals as well with these sites. And then now we have the red-naped sapsucker. You can see that its distribution is here, usually about yearly. It doesn't really migrate anywhere that I've noticed. And then from the female and male, you can also tell the difference because the appearance. This male will have that red little nape right here. Oh, throat. Yeah, sorry. And then the females will be missing that red. And their breeding is also monogamous, which means that they only have that one partner at a time. The interesting about red-naped sapsuckers is that they're considered almost keystone species, which is just a species that helps others maintain their abundance and also maintain the environment. They're known to make a lot of sites for others to, of course, feed, just as we showed earlier. And they're also known to actually be able to drench their food, such as insects, into these little saps that they find. So it helps feed their young, and also they like the taste of it.
If I may, one of these, I just live about the first mile off the road here. Another really good student, Western. He's getting ready to graduate. Ben Chu, I got a photograph last Saturday night. He's working very formal. Dr. Morris. I photographed this sapsucker at the Silver Creek Botanical Garden, but it's not a red-naped sapsucker. It doesn't have red on the back of the head. And I had to look very carefully. This is not his photograph, but one of his photographs showed that white in the throat had a big black frame. And that is this right here. I had to pull out Sibley to check this. It was a yellow-bellied sapsucker. They're showing up sporadically in Arizona. And so it's easy. Well, sapsuckers down here, most of them are red-naped sapsuckers, but occasionally you see a sapsucker, looks like a red-naped sapsucker, and you don't see that red in the back of the head, and you see this black line here on the upper part of the red throat. That's one of the cardinal characteristics of the yellow-bellied sapsucker. Less than a mile from here last weekend. And somebody had one up in, was it Brian or John? Somebody had one up in where you're taking them tomorrow. And this, I think Aaron, you came here from the Northwest, right? Isn't this the sapsucker?
That's what we would get, yeah.
And one of these showed up, Ken Dare, I think, our Silver City public, who's an excellent birder, found one of these down at the Gila bird area about 10 years ago. There are 4 sapsucker species in North America. All 4 of them, at least occasionally or rarely, show up here. I don't really say anything else. Do you have any tidbits about that, Aaron? About the red-breasted sapsucker?
They're really common. I mean, we would just see them in random places all the time. You don't have to be like deep in the forest. We'd see them in neighborhoods and things like that. So they're pretty prolific.
It's a
There.
big deal, that one. Yeah, I have to add this to my life list. Yeah, right down there in the Gila bird area. So that's all, just kind of you can see the distribution right there. And they didn't even show up right here. They didn't get Ken's record. I think it was Ken who found that bird, but he certainly was involved. Ken and Brian, maybe. That's all I have to say about red-breasted sapsucker. However, take it.
So, the Williamson sapsucker was not a bird I knew a lot about before starting this presentation. I will say we did see a bunch when we did our test run at Little Cherry Creek for the original time this presentation was supposed to happen. But it is primarily black. It is very striking when you see it. We stood there for probably a couple minutes going, what the heck is that thing? Definitely not a bird I see super common. And something interesting, I don't know if we have a picture of the female in here. Okay. Oh, yep, there we go. When they were first describing it, they thought it was 2 different species. They thought it was just completely different woodpeckers. Could not fathom that it was the same, just male and female. And probably the funniest thing I've read in that chunk book is that they will nest in same general area, but if there is a male-female couple with young, sometimes a single male will go over and feed the kids, much to the chagrin of the parents. It's like going over and popping over and giving the neighbor kids burger for no reason. Also, if the Williamson sapsucker male leaves for whatever reason, the single male will step in and be stepfather. And sometimes they'll just go feed red-naped sapsucker kids for the heck of it. So they're just looking out for them kids, and I really appreciate them.
So if I were, if you guys are so young, I would add, does that come with benefits? But I won't say that.
Oh yeah. So hopefully we'll get to see some tomorrow if you guys end up going on the field trip.
Maybe there was an unknown divorce in the family.
And here's something I learned just in the last 2 hours as I was polishing this off in my typical last minute fashion. Because Madi had given me all this information. She covered a bird I'm really familiar with. I spent a lot of time in the Midwest in the summer. I got research projects, etc. Red-headed woodpeckers are not, I wouldn't say they're abundant, but you see them pretty frequently. And you got all this information. I was thinking, why did you do that? And then about 6 o'clock, I pulled up this distribution map, and lo and behold, they get across the state here. They are in New Mexico. I had no clue. And anyway, you probably had a little more time. I would have added a few more slides, but you have a few things to share about that very distinctive bird, the red-headed woodpecker.
Yeah, unlike the Wilson sapsucker, they're actually very territorial. They'll even carry off their fledglings. Like, they do not want anyone around their food sites. So they're not very kind. I'm like, yeah. And then they actually have a very cool and rare behavior that they exhibit, which is getting pieces of anything such as wood to cover these food sites, which hasn't been exhibited in any other woodpeckers so far.
And that's the best I could. You had one in the book you showed me an hour ago. That's the best I could come up with.
And yeah, as you can see, it looks like he's trying to cover that store just to hide it from others.
Okay, I guess I was gonna do this bird, something, the northern flicker, and I have found out when the range map comes up here, this is the most widespread woodpecker in North America. Go ahead with that.
Oh, you just.
Excuse me, technical difficulties.
Do year round, but in the winter, that's all that I hear them do. Here. Then when it gets a little bit warmer and your hormones are flowing, you start thinking about doing other things. Then you start hearing if you click on the other. Flicka, and you also do a pawaka, but why listen to me try to paraphrase it. I don't ever hear that. A lot of you get out a lot more than I do. I don't ever hear that in the winter. I hear that, it's like right now I'm starting to hear that. I interpret that to start to think about pitching woo and all that kind of love. Flicker love. Okay.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah, and there, we could have an interesting discussion, maybe another time, another day. What is a species? There's the yellow shafted subspecies, that's the eastern subspecies. This is all one species, Clapes auratus. If you're into Latin, I know we're not, but it's been demonstrated. These things are very genetically, the same evolutionary lineage. There's no basis to separate what I grew up with in Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and for the first 4 years of my life. And what we have down here, this red shafted subspecies. They are the same species, okay? And you can see the yellow shafted subspecies, you see that yellow underwings is pretty clear. That also has, the male has what's called Madi was asking me yesterday, Bill, we're going to get in all this facial, all these various, we're not going to get in all that terminology, but I think this one's useful. That's a mallard stripe. It's black in the yellow shafted subspecies male, and I want to hit that in the head here. It's red in this western subspecies, the red shafted. Next, as you can see right there. Yeah, so and I'm going to tell you, you will not believe this. One of the premier places to go birding in North America is Nebraska. What? Because a lot of eastern and western, whether subspecies or two like rose-breasted grosbeaks or black-headed grosbeaks, there's a tremendous amount of bird diversity, not just the Platte River. Nebraska is a great place. And you see a lot of intermediates. There are, I guess we can't even call it a hybrid because this is one species. If you go in the middle of Nebraska and the interior of the United States, you start seeing, this evolutionary process is right in front of you. You see intermediates between the eastern yellow shafted subspecies and the western red shafted subspecies. So if you ever find yourself in Nebraska, it's worth checking out. Okay, it's not just Nebraska. But anyway, next. And there's sexual dimorphism. And this would be the red shafted. There's the male. Here's the female, kind of ignoring him right there. Yeah, the red shafted has that red mallard stripe. Next. And more than any other woodpecker, I mean, what do you suppose that woodpecker on the right, that northern, what do you suppose it's eating? Flickers love eats, and they eat other stuff, but you're more likely to see, some of you have a lot of experience birding, correct me if I'm wrong, you're probably going to see a woodpecker on the ground foraging for food. It's probably going to be a northern flicker. It also eats other stuff. There's that long tongue. And next. And so here, some of these northern flickers, if you're out in Arizona, they'll use saguaro cacti and cavities therein. We don't have any saguaro cacti here in New Mexico, so they're nesting in tree caps, putting holes in big cottonwoods and willows, et cetera, as you can see here. Next. However, if you go over to either one of those parcels of the Saguaro National Park on either side of Tucson, you will see there are northern flickers there, but there's an honest to goodness additional species, the gilded flicker, which absolutely has a Mexican distribution. And we have a lot of birders in here. I could not find a record, and I'll talk about why is this not a northern flicker. Does anybody know of any record of this gilded flicker in New Mexico? You know, all these folks. So check this out. Hey, look at this. It looks like a yellow shafted. Maybe that yellow shafted version subspecies got lost and ended up over here. But if it were a yellow shafted version, it would have a black mallard stripe, but it's got red. Okay. People have done the genetic, the analyses of the evolution. This is a distinct species, and it really likes the saguaro cactus. The gilded flicker. Gilded means gold, and if you get a good shot of this, you can see that one hit Devyn in the head. The crown of the head looks kind of gold colored. Yes.
And then in Baja, they have gilded flickers, and there's not saguaros in Baja.
What are they doing down there?
No, there's cardone cacti, which are even a little bit taller than saguaro.
Close relative.
Close relative. No, they're not even close to different.
Well, big columnar cacti.
Big columnar cactus.
So next time you're out in Tucson, you'll see northern flickers hanging around those cacti. But if you see, it looks like a yellow shafted version of the northern flicker, male. But you see that red mallard stripe. You're seeing a good species, a Gila, a gilded flicker. And that's this district. It actually gets up there a fair ways in Arizona. Here's what Will was just talking about, getting down in here. Guess you can call that the Baja flicker. Okay, this is yours, Devyn. Take it.
This is my favorite one. Congratulations. You guys get to hear me
Check
yap
your
about
shirt
it.
out.
Acorn woodpeckers are one of my favorites. As some of you know, I grew up in Illinois. So this is one that, even before I was into birding, I never saw this thing. And I saw my first one before I even got up into birding. I was staying at the cabins up in Pinos Altos, and one flew right in front of me. I went, oh my gosh, I want to figure out what that thing is. So they are insanely cool. You will hear them. They're insanely loud. I like to call them the clowns of the woodpecker world.
Yeah.
And one day I was walking out here out of Harlan with you, and I heard just one little call in the distance. I went, wait, acorn woodpecker around here somewhere. And it was on top of one of the telephone poles in the parking lot. I was so happy. So you've got this really bright red patch right here. These white spots, which are very easy to spot when they're flying. Big white patches, and they sound like clowns, they look like clowns, they bounce like clowns. They're hilarious. So one of the things you might also see when you're out and about, or possibly on the campfire, is granary trees. So much to some people's chagrin, they will drill holes and store acorns in there, hence the name. So one cooperative family, as I'll get into in a minute, will utilize one or more granary trees, and this will be their store for the winter. And so usually some will stay behind and defend it from those nasty raccoons, because if I was a raccoon, this is where I'd want to be. So yeah, no one touches my winter food spot. He means business. So as some of you may know, they are also big on utilizing the structures around them. If you're going through Pinos Altos, I actually noticed today that the wooden cross on top of the church they've drilled into.
You cannot shoot these. You cannot shoot.
There was a gentleman in Arizona a while ago that I read about online, and he opened up his wood storage tank and found 600 pounds of acorns that they had shoved in there.
Something like next slide, like that.
Oh, yeah, like that. Yeah. So they mean business. They breed in large groups. So they do cooperative breeding. It actually depends on the location. So here in New Mexico, we have polygyny, which means one gentleman mating with several ladies. In California, excuse me, I get California and Arizona mixed around, but one state has primarily monogamy with some of the younger ones helping take care of the young. And then one is polygynandry, which is just kind of males and females. So they have one of the coolest breeding systems. It's been studied extensively. I could do a whole lecture on this, so I'll quit there. But just a quick note on the sexual dimorphism. Here's the male. The white goes the red goes all the way down to the white. And here is the female. You've got this little black line right here. So I've got a male on my shirt. And then the Gila woodpecker, another very loud one that you will hear before you see it. I always forget the calls, except when I'm out and about and I go, what the heck is yelling at me? Yeah. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, no problem.
We got the drum. Cool.
I think, I'm not playing Dr. Roland. I don't think I have an MP3 of its call. It's very distinct. What's really called.
Yeah. And you'll notice, you can't see it super well, but it just comes barely into New Mexico. So it's actually a state endangered bird, even though it's in, the southern half of Arizona. And I've heard you can see these all over the place in Tucson. But just because we are lucky enough to be in the little corner where they're at, so they're pretty easy to spot. I see them all the time. And they are one of the other saguaro nesters. One of the studies I saw actually showed that they like to nest pretty high up on it and also facing north for whatever reason. So they
Probably a little cooler.
yeah. So they drill it out and then they actually let it dry for a little bit before moving in. So they're not getting their feathers all down.
Do you know, are they typically building nests inside the cavity or are they, I know some birds don't actually build nests, they just nest on a branch or something. Do they just nest in it or are they somehow creating something in there? So
I believe they're drilling it out and then nesting in there. I don't know the specifics, so I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
We'll ask Mr. Sean, can we pull his book out?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, it's a cheap book. You can get a copy of it for $25. You're in the Woodpeckers. That's a lot of what we're sharing with you came in this book.
So some more sexual dimorphism, red patch. And when you're looking at a distance, you may think it's a ladderback woodpecker because of the pattern, but it has this brownish tan right here. So that's a good way to tell. And yeah, and obviously they're here, so they're not just nesting in saguaros, they're also nesting in cavities in the area.
Quiz question, some of you heard this in one of my classes. Where are the nearest saguaro cacti? Silver City, New Mexico. Is it? So you go in my class, the rest of you, we're within 150 miles, you can go and see the saguaro cactus growing a big population spaces.
Tucson.
Okay, Tucson, that's 180 miles. That's close. How many of y'all have ever driven from the metropolis of Safford? Thatcher, showing a favoritism towards one or the other. You're heading across the San Carlos Reservation, and there's a big hill there. And if you're turning and you're coming back from Globe, hey, look at that! This big dry hill. There's a bunch of saguaro cacti. Yeah, but closer than you might. Really? Is it looking pretty healthy? It is. Yeah, you gotta be careful when they have
and so like several other woodpecker species, they provide, after they vacate the home, this provides awesome habitat for other bird species, other rodents, things to move in as well. So it's a really important part of the ecosystem, like this elf owl or this purple martin.
I was blown away a couple of years. If you didn't show me that picture, what is that? I couldn't have told you. Of course, the caption down there tells you. Sorry for Devyn. I was in the east parcel of this Saguaro National Park. There were purple martins flying around. What? My experience with purple martins is around water and these big, these multi-tiered houses right out there in this Saguaro National Park. And obviously they were using these holes built by yellow flicker, northern flickers, Gila woodpeckers. Like purple martins in the desert. There it is.
So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, they are considered a species of special concern here in New Mexico, just because it gets in a little here. So can't shoot them.
That's something to think about. It's not for us to say. This is what things on the very edge of the geographic distribution. Political boundary cuts a little slice of it off. People who are in Mexico Game and Fish or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, people who have to come up with these lists, what are we going to call endangered or threatened or special concern? They have to justify, why are we going to call the Gila woodpecker a special concern species when it's abundant as Hades in Tucson? It is. Is that justified? Just because we just have a little, because the political boundary hit it there? I'm not here to say I have the answer. Something to think about. These are things that people in conservation wrestle with. Yes. Yeah.
So the big ones have a wider range?
I don't know. They're, as Devyn said, when you get over here, they're quite common in southern Arizona. You know, with all these millions of species of organisms, they all have limits on the geographic distribution. What is it? And the saguaro cactus, I was just talking about this morning. Okay, we're talking about birds. We know what limits saguaro cacti. They can't live or any more than 24 hours of freezing at a given time. That's, you know, those millions of species of organisms. That's one geographic distribution that a boundary has been determined. You know, what's going on? Why aren't the Gila woodpeckers over here? Don't have an answer to that.
So next up is Lewis's woodpecker. I personally have not seen one. Really want to. So
Give it time.
oh yeah, hopefully. So they are pretty distinctive, as you can see. They don't look like, you know, you're not going to confuse this with a hairy or a downy. So the picture doesn't quite show it, but they actually have this really cool metallic sheen to them. So if you see a green and pink woodpecker, that's your guy. So this is actually one of the only woodpeckers, as far as I'm aware, that does more of a flycatcher behavior instead of you know, really drilling into the holes. They're out, you know, kind of like your phoebes or your kingbirds, where they're doing these big ellipses. And so if you're, you know, in the woods, you see something fly like a crow, big ellipses, you might have something like this. So they also change their diet depending on what's available. So in the summer, they're going to eat insects, and fall and winter, they're going to eat fruits and nuts. You know, as the seasons change, and skip back a little bit, they get pretty up north. So, you know, obviously, as you get a little colder, it's not going to be a whole lot of insects up there.
Anybody here, experienced birders who are in attendance, have any advice for these two, or then you'll see the list of woodpecker?
Eastern Oregon.
All right, I'll take it.
Otherwise, no.
It's like we're traveling now.
This is bird count up here. Yeah.
About 6-7 years ago, we had an invasion. I mean, there was, if you've been here 6 or 7 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to, I mean, it's not like they were really common. We really had no trouble. Flicker, it's not the only woodpecker. You see one of the most common woodpeckers around here is a northern flicker. You hear the here, see it flying away, and you see that white rump. That's a really good characteristic for that. I think that's it. I think you guys did pretty good.
Thanks.
This was good. Eric first. Good job.
I only flooded a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I had a puddle over here.
Thank you guys for coming. You know,
Questions?
Someone earlier, I think, asked about deterrence for woodpeckers. What I found worked finally after spending a lot of time on a ladder and repairing the stucco, filling the holes, etc. The reflecting, dangling things that flutter in the wind. Ones with silver and blue discs and icicle-looking things. If you go for those, I strongly recommend getting rid of what they attach together the various parts with, because they don't last in the spring. When the winds get going, they end up on the ground.
Yep.
Reinforcement, rewire them, whatever, reattach things, but they do work. Also mounted a very large horned owl on one corner of the garage roof, and they pretty much ignored that. They got used to it, I think.
I've seen pigeons standing on top of a fake owl and rubbing this happens. So
Hell, they're pigeons, they're not all that bright.
yeah.
Any other part?
I live within a block of the college here. And this year, the ladderbacks are eating peanut suet quite frequently. But last year, they were on the Oriole feeders repeatedly. Do other woodpeckers suck from Oriole feeders as well?
The Gila. When I was doing my research, it looked like some in Tucson will drink out of the hummingbird feeders and, you know, some of the other types of feeders, and then also knock on the window when they're empty. So
Yeah.
they're funny.
Yeah, I would say there's quite a few species that use like bird feeders, especially like sapsuckers as well. I've seen some photos of them. And with the suet, of course, the ladderback has also been seen to feed on that.
Maddie, could you give us a 15-second, maybe 30-second synopsis of what you're doing for your senior project?
Yeah, so I'm actually trying to get the abundance of species richness for woodpeckers and different vegetation types. So I have chosen a woodland, desert scrubland, I believe a riparian, and there is another one,
Coniferous forest?
coniferous forest. There you go. Yeah, and so I'm going out there and I'm trying to see how many woodpeckers I'm able to find and hear. And then we're trying to see what vegetation that you find them more often and the species diversity that we see in these.
This woman has embraced woodpeckers.
Yeah. I love
And you're graduating here in about a month.
Yes, I am.
Dr. Madi Vasquez.
Open.
Open about it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments for the?
I don't know if anybody else has noticed, I would be surprised if you haven't. We live up in VA. We don't go birding at night, we go batting through the kitchen window because the Mexicans, what, long-nosed feed at the hummingbird feeder. And if you keep the kitchen lights out at our place, you can see them coming in, especially on a moonlit night. And I mean, they are hit and run, boom and gone, that fast at the feeder. I don't know how they get anything, but they must, because they empty the feeders.
And here's a better look at that ladderback woodpecker nest
Yes. Cavity.
from the agave. Thank you so much, Patricia.
One last question, totally unrelated to woodpeckers, but I've been trying to find out. Surely
Somebody
many
here
of
might
you are
know
aware
something.
of Dale Zimmerman. Okay, the late Dale Zimmerman.
Yeah.
Does anyone know, he was working on a book years and years ago on uncommon hummingbirds in this area. And I happened to look out the kitchen window one morning and there was a cherry tree right out front. There was what at first looked like an all-white hummingbird sitting in the cherry tree. I got some decent photos of it. I posted one to the Audubon website. Dale saw that, contacted me and asked if he could use it in his book. Does anyone know if he ever finished that book?
I don't think he would. A lot of you know, he came in his mid-80s, he wrote his memoir, Turco Country. I think someone in here would be aware of that book if he had published it. He had a lot of projects going on all the way up into his late 80s. I've known a lot of great field biologists in my 66 years. He is the top of the line. Our herbarium, and is named after him. He founded that when he came here in 1957, because we kind of almost like as a side project. He would tell, I've asked him what his primary interest was, how I got it out of my mouth. Well, he said, very stentorian voice, birds, and as I told you guys who are here, some of us got to know him really well. I don't think he ever attended a graduation. He turned his grades in. He was on a plane heading somewhere around the world. Yeah, we were lucky to have him. He was out here for 30 years. He retired in 1988. He wrote and illustrated Birds of Kenya, Princeton Press. Every bit as good, not disparate as anything Roger Torrey Peterson, who was he started that whole enterprise there. Dale's work was every bit as good as that. Dale came here because he knew that this part of the Southwest had not been explored a lot. He could have taught at any big institution. And he wanted to be here so he could explore the Gila and some of these areas in southeastern Arizona. So I don't think that he finished that, but he certainly knew hummingbirds. All those, the Peterson Field Guide to any book on hummingbirds, by Sherry Williamson, I think is one. You look in the acknowledgments, we thank Dale's and Marion Zimmerman for these 50 photographs or whatever. He was not only a fantastic artist, a great writer, quite the wordsmith, as some of you probably have figured out. He was a great photographer. He was a really good friend, and my students here know a lot of the places. I've been here 24 years. I go to Mangus Springs, Signal Peak, all these places, Cherry Creek Campground. Dale showed me those places. He didn't tell me when I got here 24 years ago. Well, this is where you're gonna be taking your students. He just, Bill, Mary and I are going to Mangus Springs. Would you like to come along? He showed me all his field sites. And so you guys are benefiting from that. I retired here in 2 or 3 years. I'll hopefully pass that baton. He was quite the guy. So I don't think he published that book.
Right,
Some stories about Dale.
From what I-
A lot of it in here.
It's right.
Yeah, you got his memoir, that big Turco country.
No, I never have. I would like to.
Yeah, it's lots and lots of photographs. Mark,
Bill, when you're out in the field and you hear something interesting, do you have a particular cell phone app you recommend for recording?
I'm not the person that asked that question. Where is Heidi Erstadt when you need her?
She's taking care of family right now, but I'm sure she would say Merlin for Merlin. Yeah, it's the companion app to eBird, which is the Cornell Ornithology Lab's identification or listing app. Then Merlin is the identification app, and it includes sound. You can record and it will help identify by sound. And
It isn't perfect. One
Yeah.
time over at
No,
Iron
not
Bridge,
at all.
I heard a hound dog and it said it was 3 different types of owls. So, so take it with a grain of salt.
However, I know we want to wrap up, get a little warm in here. You all seem to be really engaged. About 6 weeks ago, one more Ornithology Labs. Were you guys on the one who saw the Harris hawk?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just sort of walked that farm lane, we parked there by the cattle guard and had probably about 10 students and we looked up. That's probably a Cooper's hawk. And when I looked up, it really didn't get a good view. See a little bit of that white base of the tail and the rusty. I think that's a Harris hawk. And I think it was Xavier Kirker. He used that Merlin app and Bill, that's what Merlin says it is. So I felt vindicated here, but that software can be pretty good. Yeah, so I can number of tails. One more 2 years ago up in the forest, I heard the whistle I didn't recognize. Jaron Robinson, who's also a really good student, getting ready to graduate, he pulled very nonchalant, pulled out his, well, Bill's is telling us this is a mountain chickadee. And of course, we all know the chickadee, I didn't know that whistle. And finally got to look at it, it was right. So, because I think I've heard Heidi and I've heard you and your presentations, they're good tools, but I wouldn't rely on them. This is you gotta see and hear the bird, but it's good to get you in the right direction.
One thing I would add to that is there are directional microphones that you can get that even at the bird, and it's only accepting a sharp angle to what you're pointing at. And you could get those that will sync with your phone, or you can plug them into like any kind of something. But you get them to work with a phone app, or at least you can get the right recording of it. Once you get the recording of it, and that gets out any other noise that's not directly coming from that direction.
Yeah, I'm all about technology. I don't use it a lot, not because I don't like it. It's just I'm old school here, and I have students who have all this technology, and that's great.
When your hearing starts to go, you'll start.
I'm there. I heard some cedar waxwings a few weeks ago. It was like, yes. I haven't heard a brown creeper lately. See how many more years I'm debating that. Some of these guys heard me. Yeah. I'm there, Mark.
Tell us about the field trip tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll be going up to Little Cherry Creek. We're going to be either meeting up there at 8 or leaving from the parking lot under the solar panels near the Fine Arts building at 7:30. Parking is really limited, so if we can, maybe try to carpool. But we'll be going about a little less than a mile in, a little less than a mile out. Wear a couple layers, bring some water. There is one creek crossing that we should be able to get through with no problem. Probably not getting more than this wet on your shoes. So I was out there for about half an hour, 40 minutes and around noon today. And I think I got near 20 species. So hopefully, knock on metal stool. We're gonna be looking at some good species tomorrow, hopefully a bandtail pigeon or two, because that's what we saw when we were there last time. So lifers for both of us.
And about how long, what time do you think we'll be back?
Probably 11:30. Yeah. So not too long, but we'll be seeing some stuff, and if you misidentify, we'll throw you in the creek or something, Now, we have binoculars available, so if anyone is newbie birder and thinking about it, please join us. We have binoculars and lots of knowledge. Yep. Hope to see you guys there.
And Get Friendly starts April 19th through May 17th online, and then we'll be in Gal Park on May 3rd, which is Saturday, so. Fertilize, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us on Zoom. We're gonna sign off now.
Talking about this last November.
Thank you so much for bringing the nest in. I was afraid of getting splinters. Yeah, leave it around. Oh yeah, do you want me to leave it up here for a second? Yeah.